Hello, everybody. That was kind of weak. Hello, everyone. Thank you. So we're talking about investment, and my interest here really is to talk about a subset of investment, and really that's investing for a transformational change. So one of the things you have to think about when you're talking about transformation is really the first question. And that first question is probably, what is missing? And when we look at systems, whole systems, the concept of what is missing becomes very important. So it also affects a lot of other parts of the proposition. If you are thinking about transformational change for a community, then the whole concept of value becomes much more complex than it does in a simple economic investment where we all know it's about the money. So you have to define what success looks like, what is essential to success, what must happen now, what can wait, and who your partners are. I really think it's important to think about this missing element because you can't maximize impact if you do more of what already is. So, as many of you know, I made my career in the energy business, so this is a little bit different, but I've always been interested in investing in the community, and the focus has been on youth, and the focus has also been on the arts. So today I'm just going to talk about two examples because I think they kind of allow me to illustrate this idea of transformational change. One of them is something that has been in progress for many years, and that's the Omaha Conservatory of Music. And by the way, Ruth Mintz is here. She's the director. That's where the real credit goes. But the other one is Millwork Commons, and that's a project that's in process right now, and we're sitting in Millwork Commons in part of that development. So that's what we're going to talk about, and I need this thing. Okay, so the Omaha Conservatory of Music. This is a project that's been ongoing for on the order of 20 years or so, and I'm going to talk a lot about its genesis, and then I'm going to talk about where we find ourselves today. So we had a belief, I'll call it, that music was important. Music is a language that predates language, the spoken word. It exists in every culture, every corner of the globe, from intricate gamelan orchestras from the island of Bali to the Inuit throat singing, to Mtubu tribes' communal improvisation, to Bach, to Brahms, to Schoenberg, to Glass, to Ellington, to U2, to Adele. Yeah, it's everywhere. Why is that, and why do we care? Music making is a transcendent act of community building. It activates our senses, it lights up our minds, our imagination, critical thinking, physical awareness, adrenaline. It's filled with emotion. It raises our heart rates. It paints pictures that we hear. It's an inherent part of being human. So music seems like it's fundamental to who we are and to communication. So what was missing? So in Omaha, we had no real conservatory. And I learned that from someone that I wanted to hire. I sought to hire this person who would be a wonderful employee for our company. They would be moving, and they liked our company. They had a young family, and they said, "Do you have a conservatory?" And we said, "No, we don't." That illumination of what was missing struck me, and I thought, there's a lot of value. The more I learned about music, I understood there was a lot of value in the music and that we could make a difference in the life of youth through music education and performance. The target of that benefit, delivering that benefit, would be the youth in our community. And out of the gate, we knew that we had to design what was important. So what are the essentials for this endeavor that we were thinking about? And so we said we have to be committed to excellence. That's got to be the core. We have to be committed to community. We have to be committed to collaboration. And we have to be committed to outreach. Some of those are obviously in tension. Outreach and excellence. Excellence is often kind of narrow. Outreach is kind of broad. But somehow we had to find a way for us to be a community-based organization. Those were things that we said were important before we started. So we founded a conservatory, the Omaha Conservatory of Music. We founded it in kind of the basement of not the nicest basement of a building. And after we worked on it for a decade, we had 300 students. And that was great. 300 students is meaningful and all that, but we had 300 students and we'd been working on it for a decade. And our vision was about the importance of music. And music is important. That's not wrong. But one of the things we started to do is we started to understand a lot about the brain science that was being done. We also started to do a lot of measurement. We had been doing a lot of measurement and metrics around our students. And what we saw these other effects. And these are well known, so I know what you're going to say, but we saw dramatic improvements in math and reading. We saw dramatic improvements in behavioral statistics. We saw that the youth who engaged in this difficult field of practicing music were engaged in a much broader kind of social context and historical context. This was all corroborated by research that can be read by pretty much anybody who's curious enough to go dig through the science, and really was also corroborated with this highly advanced brain science, which was coming to the fore. Remember, this is about 2001. So we had now a new way of talking about the conservatory and what it could do in our community. We didn't stop talking about the music component, but we did say, this is about more than music. And wouldn't it be great if we could reach a lot further? And when we said that, and we went into the community and we talked about the change making in the permanent prospects for youth in our community, then we had a vision that we could talk about. So that occurred in 2014. We decided to launch an expansion of the conservatory. We moved out of our rented facilities and into what was formerly Temple Israel. So a very large, 50-ish thousand square foot complex, which we converted into a state-of-the-art music school for youth education. We did that with the support of the community. The support of the community culminated in us raising about $20 million. And that $20 million was raised because the donor community in Omaha, which is this amazing, spectacular community, could understand the multifaceted paradigm, the story that covers not only the beauty of music, but also the importance of investing in youth. And now we serve almost 3,000 students, and we serve them throughout the entire community and beyond. So we have outreach that goes through the entirety of the metro, but also even outstate. We get as far as the western edge of the state and into Iowa, and we continue to grow. So that's pretty spectacular. And our main, the main thing I'd say we're terribly proud of a couple things. We're terribly proud that if we spend 2 years with a young person, their brain is wired differently, they have different prospects, their performance in school is better, and they are different forever in a good way. That's great. We're also pretty proud that we have some kids who've debuted at Carnegie Hall, which is a pretty big deal too. And they're pretty cute, those kids with the little violins. I mean, you gotta love them. There's a little girl right here. I don't know if I can work this. This little girl right here had the thickest glasses that you can imagine, but she was quite a trooper and she could play beautifully. So, when we think about transformational change and we think about what's missing, it's interesting what you can accomplish if you execute a plan to realize on things that fit into the gap that exists. So that was an example of a nonprofit, entirely philanthropic, very community-based and community-supported, that continues to grow and thrive in our community. If you do want to learn more about it, Ruth, would you stand up? And Mark, would you stand up? So Ruth runs the show. Mark tries to give her enough money so that she can run the show. Those two can tell you a lot more about the conservatory. If you haven't been there, go there. There are events all the time. They have a website, and that website has a name. And Ruth, what is the name of the website? OmahaCM.org. You can go see events on there, events on the website. You see their listing, and you can go and you will find that you will be absolutely enchanted with the beauty of these young people and the music that they play. And by and large, it's all free. And so 70th and Cass, go there. Wonderful thing in Omaha that now exists. Something that is different, because it's not a philanthropic thing, but it's a similar idea, is Millwork Commons. So transformational change ideas can apply to a for-profit thing just as easily as they can to a nonprofit thing. So as you think about our wonderful city of Omaha, it's a wonderful place to live. We have arts, we have sports. Some people enjoy a game called football. It's a sport with a kind of a pointy ball. And people wear helmets. We have family gathering spaces, we have arts, we have a wonderful, glorious community, a great place to live. We have educational opportunities. We have ways for our youth to grow up, to fulfill their potential, and to find their way in life with great education. These institutions are really ways that we as a community can invest in our most critical assets, which are our youth. I think we're well served in a lot of areas. We've got, economic opportunity. We have a history with many strong businesses and a real tradition of industry in this community. But growth is stronger in other places, and we ought to be willing to call a spade a spade. We are not growing in some areas at the same rate as other cities our size. We're not doing as well as we should, and that is a problem. So when we look at other places and we say, what makes them different? One of the things that I think I see, and I think a lot of people see, is our city lacks a center of gravity for innovators, for technology, and for creatives. And so when you think about that missing element, what is missing here, to me and to a whole group of people that I talked with and consulted with, that was a clear missing element in our community. And all the other infrastructure is there, the scaffolding of education and great industry and economic power. It's all there. We were missing something. So when we thought about that, we thought, is that such a bad problem to have? Well, it is a bad problem because a lot of young people can't find the future that they want here. So those who want a cutting-edge, technology-driven opportunity and the lifestyles that go with that and the lifestyles that surround that are not finding as much of that here as they're finding other places. And I'm kind of, I guess for one, I'm kind of sick of that. I mean, I like Denver and I think that's cool and I understand why that's a beautiful thing. But we too can develop a dense districts focused on fostering innovation and creativity. And so that's really what we set out to do. And we believe it can be a job generator, a lifestyle generator, and a real inspiration. And so we're embracing this idea of the Silicon Prairie, where technology and creatives mix and mingle, where we promote and encourage a diverse ecosystem, diversity in people, attraction to everyone, but also a diverse landscape and environment. And that, we think, creates life-building type opportunities. So that brings us to this manifestation of that realization, and that is that we, and I'm not trying to make this a commercial, but the idea of Millwork Commons, this neighborhood we're in, was really launched about 2 years ago when we started thinking about revitalizing this area of North Downtown Omaha. Yeah, we have these big old factory buildings, some in need of restoration, mostly in need of restoration, and a lot of vacant ground. It's kind of a tough area. The real bright spot was the amazing success of this enterprise, the Mastercraft, where today there are 400 people working for 50 different companies. That's up a little from over the past couple of years, but this is kind of the example of what can be accomplished in this neighborhood, we thought. So this neighborhood's been active for 130 years. It was an economic hub in this city. Ashton was millwork factory. Furniture was made here. The people who worked here were really the craftspeople and innovators of their time. We envision this as being reborn, designed to inspire and support the work of today's innovators and creators. So in honor of its history, we called it Millwork Commons. We have a couple of the places are old millwork factories. We conceived this too also as an organic ecosystem. We think the idea that it's only about one thing. It's only about bars and restaurants. It's only about apartment buildings and places to live, or it's only about office buildings is a mistake. The cities that we love are all mixed up and put together in ways that kind of find their way organically. So as we design our neighborhood, we're trying to draw inspiration from the places that we see and like. So this is kind of a bird's eye map of what we're thinking. So we're sitting inside the Mastercraft. You can see that on the right. That's, as kind of a fun fact, it's about the length of the Titanic. I don't think it will sink. It's about the length of 3 football fields. That's something that most people relate to. It's a big building. Just adjacent to it, the Ashton is almost twice the size by floor footage as the Mastercraft, even though it looks pretty small next to it on this drawing. But it's a huge undertaking. It's a millwork factory. It will be operating and open for business mid-year this year. Flywheel is moving in during the month of May. pretty amazing. This neighborhood that we're looking at here covers 50 acres, which is bigger than some farms for my grandparents. You see, when we see this neighborhood, some of the buildings we see on this map don't exist today. So they're our aspirations, and we intend to execute on those aspirations. But as this fills in, you will see restored historic buildings adjacent to brand new, very modern buildings of today. So it'll be a very mixed palette, and it will be tightened up and snug. When we do this, we're preserving the mastercraft to be what it is and not changing that. We're also looking at the potential for the entire neighborhood and how it works together, but we view it as a diverse organic ecosystem in its own right. And part of that means we have to listen to those around us. We're partnering with people who are genuine citizens of our community, who do restaurants and retail and other things like that. Here is an artist rendering looking across the newly landscaped area. Right now, I know all of you drove by this very muddy, ugly construction site to park your car here. That won't be that way forever. And ultimately, it'll be a beautiful park-like setting. And the entrance to the Mastercraft will face right out toward where we're sitting or the entrance to the Ashton will face out right toward where we're sitting in the Mastercraft. And so you'll see a beautiful setting, a beautifully restored building. It will be home to Flywheel, and that's a very important element here that I'll talk on a little bit more later, and they've already gotten shout outs from the floor here. So the first floor of this building, of the Ashton, importantly, is an extension of our commitment to create the kind of community that we want to be in. And that is, there will be a public space of what is sometimes in the trade called a privately owned public space. So there will be a large entry space in the building where you can work, you can convene, you can meet, you can grab a coffee, etc. The space that serves as an expanded lobby is about 8,500 square feet. So this would be kind of like if you went out to one of those neighborhoods in West Omaha and took one of those monstrous houses and took it all apart and put the floor space all out flat. That's how big it'd be. It's a very large space. So it'll be a great place for you to go and convene with your friends. So this sounds all lovely, but when you're trying to invest for transformational change, how do you actually do any of this stuff? I mean, that's kind of tricky, actually, right? So we had to do things. There was an order of execution problem here. We had to first go to the existing owners with a compelling vision of what this neighborhood could become and say to them, we can give you a fair price to acquire your property, but we have to do it in a way that's kind of unorthodox. And that means we want you to agree to sell your property to us, but we can't buy it if we can't buy all the property in the neighborhood, because one nice building is kind of an okay investment, but a nice building in a nice neighborhood is a better investment. And it made our deal making complex. So we said to the property owners, if you'll all get on board for this, we'll treat you right, but we need some time. The city had given up on this area. Now, one of the reasons there's no gentrification in this plan is because there was nobody to gentrify out of this space. It's vacant, tough, some of the buildings abandoned, et cetera. We said, but we went out to the landowners and we made deals to get the key properties all under control. The city had also given up on it. So we had to go to the city and say, would you put the streets back in? If you put the streets back in, and if we can wire this thing together, we will redevelop the area. But if you don't do that, we really can't. So now you've got a two-legged stool. It still won't stand up by itself. We needed to have a proof of commercial concept, which had to be a deal with somebody who's willing to pioneer their way into this area in a meaningful way, and that was Flywheel. We made a deal with Flywheel. They took a risk with us. We took a risk with them. We agreed. We put the third leg of the stool in place, and we said, okay, this is great. Now we have everything assembled. And there was still one challenge, and that was that while it appeared to be a great idea and a great investment, we also needed some money. So in that, I call this an order of execution problem because, there's no reason to worry about the money if you can't do the other things. But what we did was we said, there is a vision for this property of being a transformational change for this neighborhood that is also transformational to Omaha, that creates this space for creators and innovators and tech, and creates a neighborhood that will have young people want to stay in Omaha rather than move to that shiny neighborhood in Denver or what have you. And it can be a very meaningful thing. So we said to a lot of people that we knew in the Omaha community, why don't you join us and we will create a fund? And so we created a fund. It's called Black Dog Fund. And we have a black dog, so we named the fund after our dog. That really did happen that way. We thought of really tricky, cool, corporate-y names, but this is the one we liked. So we created Black Dog Fund and put together $40 million and from the community. And that's a real investment commitment to this neighborhood. And it comes from many people who have a history in Omaha and believe in it, and also believe it will be a good investment. So we are now in the position to, going back to that map, to build out, to redevelop and build out the core of this neighborhood, to reestablish the street infrastructure and the city infrastructure, and to do so in a way with effectively permanent financing, which will allow this neighborhood to thrive. And we believe that it took some faith and some risk taking for those investors to join us. So, our vision has been kind of the same here from early on. That is a vision that we could have rebirth of this neighborhood, previously pretty blighted, a bridge to a former redlined area. This is an area that was purposely neglected, an engine for employment and growth in our community, and an engine for Omaha's innovation and tech development. Urban revitalization of this community with jobs, with food, with lifestyle, and the kind of place that I think we'd all be comfortable and excited to be in. So that's what we think of when we think of transformational change and transformational investing. And I'd be happy to answer questions if people have time for that. And if I know a lot of people have schedules, so if you have to scoot, feel free to scoot. And that's what I have to say.